Welcome, everybody. Hey there, James. Hey there, Sam.
Hey there.
Everyone. Great to see you all.
Good to see you all too. And for our listeners and viewers, welcome to another demo day brought to you by Astar Network. I'm going to jump right into it. Today we have a very special guest team that is working in a field that I believe that many of us cherish. Well, I know I do. It's gaming. Um, James Lawton and Sam Barbary join us from the Sequence team and will give us that sweet, sweet game and Web3 nectar we all crave. James, Sam, thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule and for joining us to educate our community and builders.
Thanks for having us. Good to be here.
Awesome. Thanks so much.
And if you don't mind sharing a brief introduction about yourselves, maybe some background, time in the industry, favorite game growing up, how many times you let the Tamagotchi die, anything, the all important stuff. And I think we should begin with who looks like took care of their Tamagotchi the best, James.
I mean,
Totally fair.
I'm repping the background a little bit, so and I think that's definitely accurate, Luis. Yeah, so I'm James Lawton. I'm the head of developer relations here at Sequence. I've been in the blockchain space for around 10 years or so, first as a consumer, been a developer since around 2017. Previously, I worked as a principal solutions architect at Chainlink Labs, and I joined Sequence around 6 to 9 months ago, where we're really scaling and building out all of our developer platform and bringing new developers from especially Web2 games into the space to enlarge it overall. My favorite game, I'll say my favorite game that I've been playing the longest is Dota 2. So I have an embarrassing amount of hours, which I won't even comment here, and unfortunately, and I'm still pretty bad. How many times I let the Tamagotchi die? I think I just let it run out of batteries and let it started. It was begging me to feed it and never got around to it.
Thanks so much, James. No, I'm not a good caretaker either. What about you, Sam?
Yeah, I'm Sam Barbary. I'm head of strategy and partnerships here at Sequence. I've been in the gaming industry my whole career. I was part of the founding team of a company called Super Data Research, which we ultimately grew into the largest provider of business intelligence and competitive data on digital games, esports, gaming video content. Had kind of like a similar seismic shift in the gaming industry as we went from physical discs to mobile, digital distribution, free to play, and everything else. So a lot of PTSD in our current landscape. Sold the company to Nielsen back in 2018. I stayed at Nielsen for a while and then came into the Web3 gaming world first at Animoca, where I was running one of their companies, and then met the team here about a year ago. So excited to be here and kind of talk through everything that Web3 gaming is and can be.
Awesome. Thanks so much, James and Sam. And yes.
And Red Dead Redemption.
Oh, yeah.
Jeez. Almost left out the most important thing. Yep.
It's still one of the most fascinating, detailed games I've ever played. Red Dead Redemption 2, right? Polishing the gun, the bullets, everything. I'm a big fan of that one as well. So you're going to teach us how to make that kind of game, right? Just with Web3 components?
We will. Yeah.
That's the plan in the next 30 minutes.
Perfect.
On-chain birds.
Yeah. And Sam, anything related to Tamagotchi, or is it bring up?
I never touched it. No,
trauma?
It was like my school just kind of banned them. Like you can have them, and it's just
We'll get you one after this call. I'll work on it.
Cool.
I got some connections.
Sounds good.
Okay, without further ado, thanks again for being here. I want to give the platform to you all. Give us some insight on what Sequin is doing, has done, right, and what the future looks like. And then jump into the nitty gritty with some how to incorporate Web3 into the games. I think a lot of our listeners are curious, and so are the builders, knowing that the gaming industry is huge and continuously growing. I have some of my questions too that I'll pop in there. And any community questions, developers, if you have questions, please throw them on there on YouTube or on Twitter. I'll pick them up and add them in accordingly. So thanks again, Sam, James, and feel free. Jump in
Awesome.
and share your screen if you're ready.
Yeah, no, thank you. I probably will because I like visuals. And I want to give like a little bit of the Batman origin story of Sequence and kind of particularly what we do. This is pretty casual, so I'll probably skip some things because I really want to focus on how we think about the developer experience and the player experience. But I just want to mention, we're pretty OG in the space. So Horizon Blockchain Games, which is the parent company of Sequence, was founded in 2017. So we've been kicking around for a minute, and we actually began as a studio. So we have experience in building and publishing one of the more notable Web3 game titles called Skyweaver. Awesome game, definitely check it out if you haven't already. And in the process of that, we sort of realized like what challenges there were in developing the game, because we came from a world where it was sort of MetaMask or nothing. And so that meant we had to create the world's first smart contract account abstraction wallet. We also had to innovate at the base layer of the blockchain. So the team co-authored ERC 1155, which obviously is the token standard for pretty much every game item on the planet. We also wrote ERC 1271 and 6492 and just launched 5189. Anytime there was something where we felt like the space wasn't innovating itself in the way that it needed to, we stepped in to do that. And over time, Sequence as a platform became the most full stack development tool set for not just Web3 games, but any kind of dynamic user experience. And we're very lucky to be backed by a real who's who of sort of the old guard and new guard of gaming, Xsolla, Ubisoft, Take-Two, as well as Coinbase, Polygon, Brevin Howard, Bitcraft. So, really have been entrusted to shepherd along the future of gaming. Again, both from, massive Web2 AAA publishers all the way to more of the Web3 native crowd. And we don't have to spend too much time on this, but, along with James, we all come from some pretty awesome places in tech and Web2 and Web3 and the gaming space. And I just want to touch upon this because, a lot of people ask like, why Web3? Like, why Web3 gaming? What is the point of all this? And developers say like, oh, I can do all this stuff in Web2. No, you can't. So, if we look at the games market right now, just like agnostic to how the games are built, we don't see that exciting of a picture. More than 70% of games are unprofitable. User acquisition costs are up 431%, development costs are up 20%, but player spend is only up 1%. And that's not great math. It means that we're working harder to make games and they're not making more money. We're also working harder to acquire users, but they're not necessarily spending or sticking around in the way that we would like them to. And so Web3 opens up a number of opportunities around decreasing developer costs and better user acquisition, helping with kind of the life cycle of the game, particularly like live ops or live services games. So bringing in user generated content at scale. And I won't spend too much time here, but the best thing is that like we're already seeing this, right? Even in the relatively early days of Web3, when partners of ours take, let's say, even a Web2 game that they have, so it's existing IP, it has users, and they integrate aspects of Web3 into it, they see significantly higher day 30 retention, they see significantly higher average spend per player, and they see higher incremental revenue. These are all the numbers that we want a game developer to see. Again, regardless of what technology is underpinning it, but it happens to be that Web3 is what's enabling this. And this is for a number of reasons, and I don't want to spend too much time on kind of the flywheel of what Web3 gaming is, but this is it in a nutshell. And I think a lot of people get overcomplicated and like what's on chain, what's off chain, like how do I integrate it? And there are, of course, multiple ways to do that and design implications for your game depending on the genre and the platform and everything else. But at the end of the day, this is what we're talking about. It's how do we benefit user acquisition to then lead to better retention? How does the flywheel of secondary spending helping provide spending power back to the primary market, and then a bunch of other mechanics that help increase monetization and kind of the enablement of new players in the space. And in terms of like where we sit in a game developer stack, this is what it looks like. So you've got the base layer of the blockchain. That's your database. Like that's the location where things happen as it relates to being on chain. Sequence enables that to interface with your game and then ultimately the player. And so you could think of us sitting side by side with like your game engine in terms of what actually gets integrated into the consumer facing experience. And so, as I mentioned, James and I are going to go through all of this. That requires a lot of stuff. So we have built the most complete solution for Web3 game development, from wallets to in-game marketplaces to payment rails to in-house indexer and relayer and node gateway and advanced analytics and everything else. Because as we all say, like we just want game developers to focus on building the game. We've got you covered for everything else. So I'm going to hand things, I think, over to my buddy James. And feel free to chime in with questions.
Yeah. Awesome. Sam, I think you gave a great overview of like breaking down the market where Web3 can also make a big empowerment and improvement over like existing models in Web2. So now we can get to the techie nerdy stuff. How does this actually work and what does an integration actually look like? So let me go ahead and just share my screen. Probably see an infinite screen in a second. And then I will bring up Asar Studio. And so what's really nice is we worked with Asar to build out this custom, basically, landing page and give you access, an exclusive access to an implementation of how to build basically your Web3 game. So what's really nice is you can come to Asar Studio and you can do nearly everything that Sam mentioned within that diagram. You can do contract management, you get invisible wallets, you can create your marketplace, you can get real-time data using our indexer, you can sponsor gas fees on behalf of your users, and then you have SDKs in order to actually integrate where you are actually building. So what I mean by that is if you're building in Unity, we have an SDK for that. If you're building in Unreal, we have an SDK for that, as well as the web and mobile. So you really get the entire suite of package, and I'll break it down and go through the type of things and steps that you'd need in order to actually build a blockchain-enabled game. And we'll see at the end how this all comes together to create this package, and actually why we have all these different tools, because you really do need all these in order to build a really comprehensive and scalable game to millions of users. And I think that's what we're all looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and sign into Asar Studio along the top right-hand side. It'll just ask me to connect with my wallet. And once I'm in here, I'll see basically the projects. Now I can create a new project right from here. So if I was actually a new user, I could just do this from scratch. But in the case of here, just for the sake of time, we recreated a project for this demo, and that will allow me to log in here. So you'll see along the left-hand side, basically all the different tools that Sam showed you in that diagram and that I just covered. And so I'm going to walk step by step. Like I said, let's go ahead and actually walk through what we typically see a game wanting to do, whether they're a native Web3 game or maybe they're an existing game, they're transitioning to Web3, they want to incorporate some elements. Let's go ahead and check that out. So the first thing that we have is our contract suite. So what's really nice here is you can see the full list of all the different contracts that have been deployed. And if I click on add contract at the bottom right, you can either select new contract or you can link an existing contract. So in this case, you could actually just pass in any kind of contract address, and that allows you to manage it right from this dashboard, and makes it really convenient so you can manage basically all your contracts in one place. You don't have to fiddle about with different addresses, going to a block explorer, that different stuff. I think the more exciting thing, though, in addition to linking existing contracts, is you can actually use our contract suite just to deploy automated and audited contracts right from this. So for instance, since we're building a game, I'm going to go ahead and deploy a ERC 1155, which we help author. And that is specifically for semi-fungible assets, normally good for like game items. So you can think of like wool in an MMORPG, where there'll be multiple instances of wool, but it all has the same kind of metadata in the background and can be used to craft different items. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and deploy on the Astar ZK Kyoto testnet. And I'm going to go ahead and name this Jelly Forest. So that'll be the name of the game that we're creating. And also what's really nice here is Sequence enforces royalties by default. So not only as a game creator, you can ensure that basically if you use the Sequence marketplace and if you deploy a collection with us, that you have those royalties enforced. In this case, I'll just set the royalty fee to 3%, and I'll go ahead and deploy that contract. Now, what's really cool from a developer perspective is normally on a lot of different test networks is you have to go to a faucet, maybe you have to solve some CAPTCHA, and it's kind of annoying to do all this. So in this case, we just sponsor, because of our smart contract wallet ecosystem, we can actually relay this transaction, and therefore it's free for the developer on testnets. So if you're just trying something out and you're deploying contracts, you don't need to go to a faucet, and you can just deploy right from here. And so they'll go ahead and send a transaction through our relayer, and just a few minutes, it will deploy the contract onto the chain. Beautiful. So it looks like we just deployed this successfully. And the first thing you'll see is like linking a collection, which is really important to do. And that actually will be like the metadata that's associated with that specific contract deployment. So let's go ahead and link a collection right away. It'll take me to the collections page, and then I can deploy a collection from here. So what should our collection name be? Let's say Jelly Forest. For description, we'll say the greatest 2D runner of all time. I think that's an accurate description. And then you can also upload like a collection image. In this case, I'll just upload an image of this banner. And then I'll also set the collection data to public, so it's publicly visible. And here you can also pass an external link. So if you want to use your own external link for your metadata collection, you can do that as well. But in that case, I'll just deploy that collection, and it will actually create it for me. And so that basically now has deployed a collection within Asar Studio. And the important thing is you want to actually add a collectible here. And so if you're familiar with NFTs, that would be basically the image, the attributes, the rarity, all that good stuff that you'd associate with the collection. And so right here, you can do it in a really UI-friendly format. In this case, I'll just call it green jelly. So that's the NFT metadata that I'll upload. And for description, it will be a common green jelly. So really simple. And token IDs are always enumerated on the 0th index. So we'll go ahead and continue there. And we can also add some different properties. So for instance, if the color of the jelly is green, maybe for rarity, we would have a rarity of common, because probably not that exciting of a jelly. And I can upload that artwork to see exactly what it looks like. So here's what we'll actually upload. And now we got that green jelly right here. And you can see, I mean, he's not that exciting. He's just a common green jelly. So I think the property attributes are all good. If you would like, you can also check out the metadata. So actually what will be stored and queried. But now we got that all good to go. And we can go ahead and leave this. Now, the next step is quite important. It's actually the connection between the contract and the metadata that you just created for that specific contract. So that's actually what will link it to the blockchain. And in this case, I'll just click Link Contract on the top left. I'll select that Jelly Forest contract that I just created, and it'll prompt me to sign a transaction. And so that transaction, you can see it's doing the common things that you would expect. So it sets that contract URI, which is where the blockchain and indexing and all that stuff will actually query in order to get those metadata attributes to put them into a marketplace or a UI, whatever you would like. So I'll go ahead and confirm that. And again, it'll just send a transaction to the blockchain. It'll just take a minute to do that as well. Awesome. So now we got basically this contract minted, and it even tells you a little flag that, okay, you've linked this contract, you've uploaded your metadata to this collection. Now that is not actually minted yet. So let's go ahead and mint this specific jelly forest. So in this case, I'm actually going to go ahead and send this to Sam. So let me go ahead and go over to settings, and I'll touch on collaborators, and I can see that Sam and myself, we're both working together on this project. So that's a really nice feature, is if you have multiple developers on your team, this is catered to if you have an entire team. So let's go ahead and add your address there. I'll go back to collections, and then we're going to go ahead and mint that jelly to you. So I'll just put Condi of 1, we'll put in the recipient address, and we'll go ahead and mint that green jelly over to Sam.
I was going to say I wanted this, so I'm glad you decided to send it to me.
You wanted the green jelly.
Everybody loves an airdrop. What can I say?
I mean, that's what we're doing here. So let's go ahead and send you over an airdrop free of charge, no cost to you. There you go. Now you got the collectible minted. And so we'll see in just a little bit about how that all ties together. But we can also see through, like, if I open up our wallet, you can see the different transactions that were completed. So I can see this transaction. It'll actually link me directly to the Explorer, and you can see the different stuff that was undertaken. So in this case, it was actually minted from the 0th address to Sam's wallet, and I can see the token ID of 0 for the Jelly Force collection. So it looks all good. Perfect. So now we got that jelly created. Now it's with Sam, and that'll come back in just a few minutes. But before I jump over and we show a little bit more about what you can do now that you have the actual NFT minted into a wallet, I do want to go over a few more of the backend features that are really nice. And I'll start off with the rest of, like, contracts. So one thing that's cool is if you are deploying a contract directly from here, you can also get access to all the read functions right from Asar Studio. And then similarly, you can also write to this. So you'll remember how I minted that collection beforehand. I could also do this again, mint an NFT to myself. I could also burn those NFTs and so on and so forth right from this interface. So if I do want to actually manage all my, like, kind of data without going to Block Explorer or even doing it programmatically, I can do that as well. But of course, we have a lot of helper functions to cater to that. So the next thing that I want to talk about after the actual contract stuff is a new tool that we just released today, in fact. So this is really exciting because it's exclusive, and I'm excited that I can actually show it off today, is analytics. And we think this is a super powerful feature. Basically, this gets you access to all of that good stuff that you need to know about your users to make sure that you're growing sustainably and that you have more people interacting. So that allows you to see, like, the total active users, the daily active users, all these different kind of breakdowns, as long as the additional data that Sam mentioned, along, like, the day 1 retention, day 7, day 14, et cetera, you can get all that information right from this dashboard, along with more information about, like, where your users are located and how you're growing and the stickiness of your application itself. What's really cool as well, that I'll just go over real briefly to our docs, is you can also use our analytics API, which taps into that data. And this allows you to create dashboards within your own data pipeline, or you can also create things like a Dune Analytics integration. So for instance, if you wanted to publicize how much you're growing, all the wallets and all the users that you're doing to your community, that's a great asset where you can actually integrate the Sequence Analytics API right into Dune. And we actually have a handy guide that allows you to do right that. So if you have any questions there, always happy to help. The next thing moving on from analytics is also gas sponsorship, which I mentioned a little earlier. This allows you to actually sponsor specific contracts with a credit card in order to make sure that your users don't have to pay for gas. So you can imagine that basically if a user is coming to a game or they want to claim an NFT or you want to mint something to them, it can be a little problematic in that initial onboarding experience, especially if they're from like the Web2 space. So what you can do is you can actually just use a credit card and you can just pass in either an address here, or you can also pass in a specific contract address, and then all the requests to that specific address will also be sponsored and just debited from your credit card as well. If you do select basically the test nets, what's really nice is you can see that we're using this functionality as well on the back end, that all those transactions you saw were sponsored, and that's actually using this gas sponsorship model that we have as well. So you can see the different sponsored transactions. And of course, again, that's on testnet, so they're sponsored by default. The other tool that I want to go over in a little bit more detail is our indexer. This is absolutely crucial if you're building a game that you want to be extremely scalable, as well as responsive that you would expect. So essentially what an indexer does is it indexes blockchain data in a highly performant, highly queryable, basically database. And that way you can interface with the blockchain without querying like RPC nodes directly. So this allows you to, for instance, within Unity or Unreal or your web app, to query certain attributes about the game itself in order to basically bring those into your system, show off certain images, and make sure it's very performant and responsive for your users. So within Asar Studio, we have the ability to have the different endpoints that we have for our indexer. And then you can select the different networks and pass in any kind of contract address that you would like. So for instance, if I actually just pass in, let's say, my specific address, I'll remove that contract address there, pass in my example wallet. This will actually update with that NFT that I just minted, and it will let me know all the information like the address, the chain ID, any extensions and metadata associated with it, all that good stuff. And then that way I could use that in my application. And what's really cool here is you actually get example code snippets. So for instance, this is in TypeScript. You can literally just copy and paste this right into your code base in your TypeScript application. Or if you want to use it in a terminal, you can also do that as well. So if you load up a terminal and go ahead and take that curl request and paste it in there, it'll work as well. And one additional thing with the indexer is we also have webhooks. Webhooks allow you to specify basically a URL endpoint that you would like to post data to. So for instance, what we generally recommend just like for testing, you could pass in like a generic webhook URL. And let me go ahead and bring this over here. And this is one that I already set up with a webhook URL along with an endpoint. And this is just because I wanted to have some data populated already. And so what this allows you to do is this is another website where you can easily create webhooks. In this case, I created this specific URL. And then basically our indexer will send post requests to that specific webhook. And then you can actually query that as well. So it's really convenient where if you want to subscribe to certain events or transactions that are happening, so maybe you want to be alerted on your application if someone does a specific token transfer or something like that, then you can just have your webhook set up to automatically populate this. And then you can query that as needed in order to make sure that your application or your game responds to any of those events that are being emitted. So this is really important. We have a lot of people using this for those kind of real-time updates and to make sure that their application is responsive somewhere that they can host or on a website like webhook.site. So I think that's definitely really useful if you want to set up your own webhooks. The second to last thing that I want to mention is one is the node gateway. So this is a common problem that we saw with a lot of developers is they would have to go to a bunch of different places to kind of piecemeal a game and specifically the infrastructure for a game together. So we also provide nodes on all the chains that we support. So in this case, on Astar, we have a few nodes that you can just copy and paste. And that means you don't need to go to another node provider in order to set this up. So it's a lot cheaper for your devs. It's a lot more convenient where it's just actively here. And we use this as well. So you can definitely leverage these node gateways. And what's really cool is we integrate multiple node providers. So if one specific node is actually saturated, then we'll actually load balance to another one in order to have redundancy. So you don't need to worry about creating your own load balancing system, which is a really common problem if you're using like public RPCs. We automatically do this on your behalf. And then that way, all the load is balanced between the different ones. And if one goes down, we would just stand up another. The very last thing I would like to touch on as we kind of work through all these different steps of building this game is the transaction API. So this is really cool. And this really powers a lot of the behind the scenes stuff that you've been seeing. So for instance, those transactions that I've deployed for the contract and linking the different metadata collection, that was all done via this transaction API. And what this does is it allows for parallelization, it allows for batching, and it allows for a lot of convenience features where you can, for instance, pay in a token other than the native token of the chain or different permutations of that. So there's a lot of different aspects that make it really nice to use this. And so frequently what people will do is they have their backend game server that Sam showed a little earlier, and then you can create like a microservice that specifically handles all the blockchain components of your game. And then that way it's really easy to debug. It's really easy to compartmentalize. And that means that you have a really highly scalable system. So if you're generating 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 transactions, this will be able to balance that load and make sure it's very performant and gas optimized. So how does this actually work? I'm going to go ahead and generate a private key. So definitely don't use this since I'm broadcasting this to the world. But I'm going to go just for demonstration purposes. I can see that private key along with the address that was created. And I'm going to go ahead and select that Jelly Forest contract that we did. And generally what you would do is as you're setting this up in the backend, you'd actually give mint permission to a specific address in order to do these minting functions. So for instance, this could be like an EOA or another basically address that you would like. So let's say I wanted to give mint permission to my MetaMask account. So I'm going to go ahead and just copy and paste that. Well, actually, in this case, I just create a new one, but we can just use this one. I could, of course, paste my MetaMask account. I'll just do this one for now. And one thing to add here is you also have access control rights. So you can actually choose like specifically what functionality this specific address should be able to do and also control. So if you want, maybe you have a treasury address and you want that address to be able to withdraw tokens, somebody can update the metadata, all the good stuff. You can assign that very granularly, which is really important when working in a large team or game development studio. This will just add them as a collaborator. So let's go ahead and send another transaction to add them. And again, while this processes, it'll just be a minute, and then we can see that the permissions have been updated. So now what's really cool is I can go ahead and add like another account. So it'll be the same account that I just created. I can say the token ID of 1, and I'll also mint 1 tokens to myself. And what this basically will do is call that mint collectible function, specifically the mint function on that smart contract, and then also mint it to that address. So again, this specific address will actually be the one that calls that function and now has the mint permissions. So I could actually pass in, like I said earlier, any kind of external account, and that would be the receiver of this. Let's go ahead and just mint it to myself. And then again, we have like an automatic code generation. So you can literally copy and paste this right into your TypeScript app because it's using all the sequence libraries under the hood. And nothing crazy here, just using ethers.js and some libraries from Sequence. But I think it's worth pointing out exactly what this is doing. Basically, you first create a session with the specific code, and then you pass in a single signer. So in this case, we're passing in that private key that I created above here. And once that private key is actually instantiated, it creates a smart contract wallet using Sequence with this externally owned account as the only signer of that specific address. And so by doing this, it allows you to have all this really nice functionality, like relaying transactions, like parallelization and batch transactions, all that good stuff. And then we're just going to pass in some different variables like the actual signer. If you are on mainnet, then you can pass in like the fee specifications. So if you want to pay in a token other than the native token like ETH, you can also do that as well. And then other words, we're passing in basically the JSON ABI information of that specific smart contract, and then of course the actual contract address. And then from here, it's just literally the variables for the account address that I want to actually mint to, and then the data associated with that. So when that's all actually well and good, pretty standard smart contract stuff, we'll go ahead and run this. And you'll notice that like I'm not getting like a specific pop-up. And so it's running this in the background and actually calling the relayer, calling that specific smart contract and minting it. And now we can see that we do have the response from the blockchain itself. And just to confirm and validate that this is a, an on-chain transaction, we can go ahead and check this out. So it looks like it was from this specific relayer address, and interacted with that contract and minted one token to my EOA account. So that was 0x97. Looks like it's all good there. And now I have another NFT to that specific address. So that is really important. And the reason why it's so crucial, like I said, is because a lot of game devs, they don't want to mess around with like nonce management or retrying transactions if they fail or parallelization and batching. They just want to have a system that executes very optimized and is able to interact with the blockchain in a very performant way that they can use traditional REST API calls for. And so this allows you to create that microservice to handle all the blockchain functionality and make it very compartmentalized and also very scalable. So you'll see how this comes into action when you have a game that is actually creating these transactions in just a little bit. So with all that said, I know I talked a lot about a lot of the sexy blockchain and backend technology. I'd like to hand it over now again to Sam to walk through specifically the wallets and the marketplace stuff, and then we can wrap up with some more information on like the game that we built at the end.
Thank you so much,
Awesome.
James. We do have an assortment of questions, some relevant for sure. Otherwise, I'm not sure. In the case of in the case of like NFT storage and images, right? IPFS or Airbnb, I'm imagining, or Filecoin's, NFT storage. Any kind of info related to that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So currently we're basically storing everything on Sequence side. If you're using this, you're free to, of course, put any kind of decentralized storage that you would like. And over the next couple months, we'll also be rolling this out as well. So we'll have options where you can store in different choices like IPFS, Arweave, kind of the common ones, Pinata, all that good stuff. That way people can kind of pick their own poison of exactly where they'd like to store this metadata.
Great, great. I saw the question about the standards too, Sam. Thanks for covering that one. Just a personal question though. I know as authors of some pretty unique standards already, is there any plans for other standards that you're looking at or developing or co-developing?
That is excellent question. So,
secret sauce.
No. So this I can actually share. So we're really quite excited about this. We have some absolute geniuses within our research team. I actually can't even find the chat. if you can just pop this in here, but essentially we just released ERC 5189. What a lot of people are familiar with is 4337 in the account abstraction space. The issue with this is 4337 is very opinionated and it doesn't fit a lot of people's use cases. And so they have to do a lot of refactoring in order to actually make it work. 5189 is actually very unopinionated. It's much more flexible and it supports more functionality right out of the box that you would actually kind of have to re-architect 4337 in a lot of ways. And I think importantly, it's also very future looking. So as we're looking at like, there's new standards being proposed for EOA accounts that may or may not be included in like future Ethereum upgrades, but ERC 5189 will be compatible with those as well. So I think that's something to note. This is also very future looking. But I think the website and the doc gives a good overview. If you're very research focused, you can check out the spec as well.
Awesome, cool. I will be checking it out. I'm always intrigued by this. I think that's where the real innovation can happen, right?
Definitely.
Thank you so much, James. Question, I think maybe a general one for myself and Astar. Why ZK VM versus native? We do have two chains, right? L1 that's secured by Polkadot, and our L2 Astar ZKM built with the Polygon CDK. They're both two different areas that, as a developer or a team, you have to make a decision. It might be related to business, related to some of the tech you want to work with. Both are EVM compatible, and both have the bridging involved as well. So including our native token Astar. So it really depends on what you're looking for and the communities you're working with or trying to attract. For usability, compatibility, we do have extremely low fees on the Polkadot side. We always have been. There's also the finality rate is comparable to the ZK EVM for sure. There might be slight differences there when you're bridging Ethereum, right? So there's extra steps when you're using the ZK EVM or any L2 really. So those are typical, obstacles that you would work with overall. But for cost-wise, I think like most teams, and you could begin experimenting right now on our test nets, and just reach out looking for if you need that test ETH or even testing with our Shibuya chain or testnet. We could send you some Shibuya tokens to begin seeing the differences yourselves. But yeah, our docs too are pretty open and pretty well formed, so check that out. And I saw that you're using our testnet Z Kyoto, right, James, for that one? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that's what I was using.
Okay, cool.
Let me know if there's anything we should be using a different chain. That'd be great to know as well. But
no
yeah.
Worries. Cool. And lastly, about the grant system, credits. I think that was another question that popped up. We do have like a 200K dish ready to go for builders. Correct me if I'm wrong here, James and Sam. The grant program, correct? Can you speak about a little bit about that?
Yeah, I can touch upon that. And so, as part of our awesome partnership with you guys, we wanted to help developers who are building in the space, and so they can apply directly for grants, and we kind of collaborate on sort of where those go and who they go out to, but obviously very focused on incentivizing incredible content and games that are building in your ecosystem and accelerating them to market. So yeah, definitely encourage folks to apply, and looking forward to working with all of you.
Awesome, good. Okay, I think we covered most of them for now. Take it away, Sam.
Cool. Yeah. So it's a good segue. I mean, we were talking about 5189 and kind of gas costs and all those things. One of the things that is in that website that we shared, but is 4337 has a challenge of having this kind of massive gas tax on things that are leveraging it, whereas 5189 does not. So in addition to all its other awesome attributes, we want to make sure that gas never gets in the way of innovation in the space. So as James mentioned, I want to talk a little bit about wallets and marketplaces, because they are the player-facing sides of surfacing the information that James just showed, right? Like we have smart contracts that are in the background. We have NFTs or tokens that come into play in gameplay and asset ownership. But where do those things go in your game, right? And so I'm gonna pop this up, and as James mentioned, obviously invite your whole team. So I'm already a collaborator here. So I'm just popping up exactly the same project that we're working on together. And I'm going to come into wallets. And so we'll talk about wallets, we'll talk about marketplaces, and then I want to show you guys like a demo game that kind of speaks to what the player experience ultimately is, because that's what all this is designed for, right? Like this is the layer behind the scenes that's making your game look and feel like a game. And so to that end, 9 times out of 10 these days, when people are saying, I want seamless onboarding for my players, we're talking about embedded wallets. And all of our wallet technology is non-custodial. That's vital for us. It's vital for those who have gone down the path. They understand kind of the legal and regulatory benefits of going with non-custodial architecture, in addition to just better player safety and trust. So non-custodial is obviously the gold standard, and yet we want to make sure that players have this really frictionless experience, right? Like we always use the word onboarding, but really what we're talking about is player account creation. And there might be Web 2 aspects of it, and there might be Web 3 aspects of it. But for the user, there shouldn't be any distinction between the two. It should be one seamless, unified user experience and UI. And so I'm going to bop in here to the embedded wallet. I won't spend too much time about like the actual configuration of it, because my boy James would be much better suited to do that. But again, more thinking about like how we've structured this in a way that's very specifically focused on enabling game developers to do what they do where they do it. And so we're all kind of used to the add-on wallet, and this like Chrome extension or a download or this thing that lives in a browser no matter where you're playing your game. That's not scalable. It doesn't work. Those games won't thrive, right? So it's very important for us when building the embedded wallet that it live where people actually build games, whether that's on web or a native mobile app or a desktop game or a console game, which is why we have the world's only verified embedded wallet SDKs for Unity and Unreal. We also have React Native. So you can integrate the embedded wallet wherever you're building your game, and obviously in a cross-platform nature as well. Any device, any engine, go forth. And I'll show you the player experience, because that's where we really see kind of like the rubber meet the road. But obviously behind the scenes is everything else that James covered here. So we never want players to have to worry about gas, right? So that's where gas sponsorship and the relayer come into play. We of course never want players to be inundated with transaction signing. So there's no transaction signing required. There's no downloads or add-ons with the embedded wallet. It's made to, again, feel like any other account creation for any game. And to that end, very user-friendly onboarding, right? So, email or social login. And another thing that's kind of very unique about how we structure this, which is a true non-custodial smart contract wallet, is you as the developer should own your relationship with the auth, right? So we see a lot of embedded wallets where they actually own the relationship with the auth, which means they own your users, which is not something that any game developer, really anyone, would want to have happen. So, if you're not going through a flow like this of like, hey, you want Apple or Google login, let's say, and it's not asking for your client ID, that's a red flag. something's gone wrong. This is not best practices. So we want to make sure that you as the developer are in charge of your world, obviously with the benefits of the non-custodial wallet for the players. James, before I switch to marketplaces, like any other nitty-gritty awesome things you want to say about the wallet?
Yeah, I think what's really cool is I'll also post a link to basically the non-custodial architecture because I think it's really interesting. But also, I think importantly to point out is users can also recover their wallet on their own. So this is an option as well, is that someone can recover it. And I think the additional thing is we're adding new login providers constantly. So if you see one that you would like, PlayFab is a common like example, or even like, I don't know, specific ones like Discord, all that good stuff. We'll be rolling these out iteratively. So I think that's also a good point.
Yeah. That's totally true. I mean, that's a good thing in general. It's just like the pace of innovation of the Sequence stack is absolutely ridiculous. And so ask and you shall receive is typically the answer. We want to build in the way that game developers continue to want to build. So you tell us where you're looking to go next, and that's something that we want to make sure happens. But I'll come back again to like, what does this look like actually in a game? But I do want to touch on marketplaces a little bit, because personally for me, this has been kind of my like vendetta in the Web3 space is, we have so many developers who are like, oh, I want easy onboarding and easy onboarding and easy onboarding. And then they say, did you want to do trading? Please follow this link to this third-party platform that I don't own, I don't curate, I don't control the trust and safety of. It doesn't look and feel like my game, and it might not even enforce my royalties. That's bananas. Like, it just kind of gets me agitated because no game developer on the planet says, I would like you to leave my game now. So for the sake of retention, for the sake of your revenue and royalties and player safety and everything else, it is crucial to have a game marketplace or an app, DApp marketplace. There are a couple of different flavors of how we do that. And so I'll show you one, I'll show you both, but the really easy thing to do, I kind of think of it as the, oh my God, I need a marketplace today sort of thing, is what we call the white label marketplace. So if you come into the builder here and you say create a marketplace, you're just dragging and dropping in a couple assets, and you'll launch a royalty enforcing marketplace that works with everything else in the stack, gasless transactions, NFT checkout, all the things you want in, I don't know, 30 seconds, assuming you got your headers locked and loaded. And so I'm going to go in here and I can, again, add any collection, right? But the platform's obviously going to already show me the collections that I have here. And so I'm just going to add a couple of them. You can drag and drop in any collection. And I'm just going to upload some banners here. And then we'll see what this looks like in the marketplace itself. So let me do, I'll leave that guy out. And then we can, really customize the look and feel of the marketplace. Because again, this is your home. This is where secondary trading happens. In addition to all the primary sales, with the transaction API and so on. So I'm going to upload another landing banner here. I'm going to say Jelly Forest demo, and you can drag it, copy and paste in all your socials. And then we've already got a favicon, or sorry, a header logo here. I'm just going to add this little favicon guy. And it seems like green is the color of the day. I'm going to actually make it a light themed marketplace. And here we go. Let's launch this guy. So that took whatever it was, a minute. I didn't super optimize the headers or anything else, but you get kind of the idea. And we can come in here and we can just, I can connect my wallet and just start selling assets, and obviously browsing and buying anything that's already on the market. So incredibly easy to make a marketplace. You can host it on the custom URL. You just put in the URL that you want to handle hosting. and you can go from there. And so what we see is, a lot of developers who are kind of like earlier in the stages of development, but maybe they've already launched a collection, they're about to launch a collection, but haven't necessarily like released the game. They're going to do this and put it on their website as the place where they want all secondary trading, for the Genesis Mint or whatever it is to happen. And perhaps they'll keep that marketplace there, particularly for more of the, let's call them trader class of players, people who might not necessarily be in the game at all or on a regular basis, but who are there for kind of the trading metagame, as I think about it. And that's where that marketplace makes a lot of sense for them. But we'll also have most developers say like, well, I want, a completely custom natively embedded marketplace as well. Great. Well, that's why there's the marketplace API. So kind of like the embedded wallet, it's headless. You're going to build whatever UI and UX around it that you want. The marketplace API is for you to build natively in your game, wherever it lives, on any device, on any platform, to look and feel the way you want it to. And so, for example, this is the in-game marketplace inside of Skyweaver. This looks nothing like a traditional marketplace, nor do we want it to, because there are a lot of custom implications for how this game is designed as a TCG that play into how we want players to be able to explore it. So I might want to look at individual cards. I might want to look at entire decks that I can buy, or certain hero cards, and maybe I want to look at things based on a certain class of item, things like that. And that is best done with the API. So you can build it in whatever way makes sense to you. So where does all this kind of culminate in terms of a player's journey in a game? I'm going to show you a little demo of a native mobile app. It's built on Unity. Again, you can imagine the same thing on web. You can imagine it as an Unreal desktop game, whatever it is. The idea is that the experience is frictionless, top to bottom. So I'm going to show you this little demo. It's actually called Jelly Forest, which is a Unity-based mobile app. And if I go full screen, cool, you guys can see it. So I'm just going to pop back, because all this happens very quickly, and this is all in real time. Since it's a mobile game, I'm not going to show it live, but you get the idea. So I logged in with my Apple ID, and that's it. I've created a wallet. It's obviously that embedded non-custodial wallet that happened in the background. And now I'm going to start playing this game, and we're going to see things that are happening, and they're all happening on chain. But from the user's perspective, they don't know. So that coin I picked up, that's an ERC20. That's now in my wallet. That's an ERC20 that's now in my wallet. So obviously, there was no download or add-on for the wallet. I'm not signing any transactions. My wallet has nothing in it. It just got created. So there's no gas token or anything else. And that's where the gas sponsorship comes into play. So I'm going to take all these ERC20s, and now I've got some spending power, and I'm going to go to the marketplace and I'm going to buy something. And so that can be anything you want it to be, right? It could be a cosmetic, it could be a power up. So in this instance, I'm going to take those coins and I'm going to buy this double jump power up, and that's it. I've bought an NFT. That's an ERC 1155, and we can look at the transaction if we want to that just happened a second ago on the blockchain. So obviously a lot of things are happening under the hood there, right? The embedded wallet, the gas sponsorship, the indexer, the relayer, the node gateway, the marketplace, the transaction API, 7 years of research and development, basically in a 1-minute casual mobile game. But that's the whole point, is to take this thing that used to be incredibly hard to do, and actually really impossible to do in terms of building Web3 games that happen to look like games. And now, we just basically went through the entire developer journey in 45 minutes. And so this is what, we at Sequence focus on doing, and we work very closely with all of the developers that we work with in, not only understanding kind of the technical implications of how they build, but we've been there, done that. We've shipped games, award-winning titles in Web 2 and Web 3, and we want to make sure that we can, help guide you on that journey of, designing in a net new kind of distribution and monetization schema for the future of gaming.
That was super.
Mic drop. That's it. That's all I got.
There's no words. Wow. I was just thinking about my Tamagotchi, game that I'm remaking, and now I have a easy marketplace where I could sell the food that James needs to not let it die so often. That's really amazing. I'm beyond words. That's really cool. I think for developers out there, it's just the way 45 minutes explanation on how you just made all these builders' lives easier is a big wow.
It's a lot. And I just want to say, I mean, the best thing is like, just get hands-on, go to the builder and just start building. I mean, I am non-technical, and I'm spinning up marketplaces left and right and minting tokens and doing all these other awesome things. And so if I can do it, anyone can do it.
Absolutely. Maybe there was a meme or two running around like a month or two ago, like how Web3 games, you have to make a transaction per every token collected. They were shit posting.
I love that meme.
It's a great one.
I was like, every bullet fired was a transaction.
And meanwhile,
just to speak to that, it's like you can design it, and this is actually the way that we designed Jellyforce with our relayer, because it makes it more efficient for everyone, the developer, for the player. You could, of course, I could, in the background be signing a transaction for every one of those ERC20 tokens that I picked up, or you could design it so that all fires as one super efficient transaction when, let's say, the player dies. So it's totally up to you as a developer, how you design that, what's hitting the blockchain, and when.
I wish this solution was put out there. This little demo right here showing that that meme is funny and all, but look at all this work we've done to solve this.
So we do have a end-to-end guide specifically for that exact game. All the assets, everything is open source and open license. So literally, if you go to I'll post a link to the documentation, but it'll really walk you through how we did it, how we did this transaction queue manager that Sam mentioned, how we actually did the embedded wallet integration. So you can either recreate it or just use the assets, do something else. Like, we are very open source friendly, so you can take it and do whatever you want.
That's amazing. Carlos, who's a dev in a well-known dev in our community, he is in the chat. We're going to team up. We're going to do something now.
Just say, you make it fun, we make it fun.
Yeah, it's good. It's going to call Staragachi or something.
Staragachi. Let's go.
I did have a few other little questions I wanted to touch upon just to round off this whole amazing demo. Specifically towards payment tools or services. So any team you're teamed up with that can make devs' lives easier. So they're well aware that they exist with Sequence.
Sorry.
On ramps.
What was the? Yeah. So we integrate all of that. So you can, it's like NFT checkout or fiat on ramp or anything else, and we like to give developers some choices in where they go, and we're always mindful of, again, just thinking about best practices. What's the highest success rate or the best global coverage, and so we're always happy to help point people in the right direction, again, for them, depending on what they're building.
Awesome.
Yep. Definitely. I think just to expand on that, we basically work with a bunch of different partners. So, payments is a whole other beast itself. So we want to, focus on the game development side and the game infrastructure. So that's why we work with different partners and work to actively integrate them into Sequence. So if there are any tools out there that would be interested in to also, work with us, we're also happy to do that.
Great.
And also ask us about, all the ways that we work with partners. For example, we're the exclusive, EVM Web3 development provider for Google Cloud. And so, if you're a Google Cloud customer, there are a lot of things that we could do there. Same thing with AWS. I mean, yeah, there's a lot more behind the scenes to help developers.
Awesome. Any other games being developed by Sequence, or no? Seeing that you've already had some good award-winning ones.
We felt pretty confident. I mean, other than Jelly Forest, that we wanted to focus on tech, and so Skyward is an incredible game, but it frees us up to help developers with their games.
Sweet. So any other words you have for our community, especially the builders out there, even words of encouragement? As we saw, there's been a lot of investment in Web3 over the last few years, but nothing really we could hang our hat on, I think, as a space, right? So what do you see that's different or that might be encouraging?
So from my end, I'll say that, as with any new category in gaming, it takes time to figure out what's the best way to do stuff, and that's at every layer, right? That's at the the technology layer, it's at the game design layer, it's at the user acquisition layer, and so I think we have actually gotten to the point where people can build absolutely anything, and again, it took 7 years of R&D just on our end to do that, and so the biggest thing, and there's a little bit of tough love in this, but just because I see developers really waste significant amounts of time and money veering off in the wrong direction. The reason why Sequence exists and the reason why we set up this partnership is there's a little bit of just shut up and start building, and unfortunately developers were often thrown to I'll say the ecosystem gods of hey, go forth and figure out how to cobble together a Frankenstein approach to developing your game. And that's just not how game development works. And I go back to this constant refrain of you don't build half a game on Unity and half of it on Unreal. It just won't work. You're not going to make a game. And so, we think a lot about developers making sure that they're set up not only for near-term success, but long-term scalability and really future-proofing themselves. And so much of that comes down to not only having the right tech and unified underlying architecture and things like that, but also just having the right partners who understand specifically what you're doing. Not what random brands dropping an NFT collection, but what you are doing as a developer.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sam. James, any last words too?
I think, Sam perfectly summed it up. So I think we're in this stage where we finally have the infrastructure, not only from, the game infrastructure side, but, different L2s that are launching that are actually highly scalable and you can build really great games on them. So, we finally have this, which is awesome. And especially with the amount of investment that is now going into consumer crypto, because I've been in the Web3 space a long time. I've been hearing about mass adoption for a while, and I think we've actually finally reached, okay, the infrastructure is here. We can build consumer-facing apps that have mass adoption. And my opinion, obviously a little biased, gaming will be the first one that goes mainstream, and there's a lot of money that is being actively poured in to facilitate this. So if you are a builder, if you're a developer, now is the time to launch something and start getting adoption so you can take it to the next level. And we're here to help you with that.
Thanks, James. Thanks, Sam. I have a feeling this won't be our last conversation for sure. So everybody that's tuning in, yes, I'm super excited for the future too. And now seeing how, wow, 45 minutes and just showing us what we could do. So stay tuned for Asar Studio, and we'll be in contact with our white label marketplace so you can start buying that food. James, Sam, thank you so much once again, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Luis. Really appreciate the community. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay. Bye, everyone.